There will be a runner. Just raise your hand if you need a pen or a paper. This is being live streamed on YouTube and Facebook by the students from the media at Jefferson High School, and it also will be taped and put on the A-Tech channel and the Cognac cable channel for future reference. So if the candidates for the 11th District Court of Appeals, Casey O'Brien and Mary Jane Trapp, could come forward, please. The candidates are going to have a 3-minute initial statement. They will be timed. So if we cut them off, that's the reason why. There's a 1-minute response time for questions. Thank you. And we'll begin with Mr. O'Brien. You have a 3-minute initial statement.
Oh, okay.
And there's your timers are over there, and they'll have signs and let you know.
Got it. Okay. Hi, Casey O'Brien. Actually, I went to preschool just down the hall here. So I grew up in the county, Ashtabula County native, born here, raised here, came back to raise my kids here. Married Wendy Trudis from Colebrook. We live in the family farm just down the road. And I'm involved in the community tremendously here. President of the Board of Directors of Country Neighbor, Inc. in Orwell. We're a food bank and Meals on Wheels provider. I was on the former member of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Northeast Ohio. Was on the ESC for the county. So born here, raised here, invested here. Practiced law for 18 years. My office is primarily out of Chardon, but I do have an Orwell office. And I've handled just about every type of law out there. I'm a litigator. I'm in the courtroom every day. I'm applying the rules of evidence every day. And I've handled, $100 million cases down to the smallest of small claims. I think it's really important to have somebody with a wide range of experience on the Court of Appeals who can realistically anticipate how their decisions will affect many cases throughout the district. I think it's important to cut down on the amount of time it takes to render a decision out of the 11th District Court of Appeals. It's my understanding there are some cases that have languished for over 200 days there. It's just not acceptable. I've got a farmer's work ethic. I'll get in there and make sure that decisions are rendered timely. I also think it's important for the 11th District to take a lead throughout the district in applying best practices from other areas of the district and the state to different areas. For example, Ashtabula County is celebrating its 10th year for drug court. I think it's important to take what works here and apply it elsewhere. I know Cuyahoga County has some veterans courts. I'd like to look to bring some of those into the district. And I think Lake County is working on some mental health courts. It's very important to get those established where necessary. So, again, Casey O'Brien, 11th District Court of Appeals.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Mary Jane Trapp.
Good evening. I'm Mary Jane Trapp, and I respectfully ask for your vote for the one of the 2 open seats on the 11th District Court of Appeals. Hardworking families deserve a better life and a better future.
Excuse me. They're asking if you could put I'm putting too close.
Oh, they're having trouble hearing me?
Closer to you.
Okay, we can do that. How's that? Is that good? I get the high sign from tech people? All right. Hardworking families deserve a better life and a better future. They sometimes face obstacles, though, that land them in a courthouse. And when that misery happens, and that's what lawyers and judges deal with, are people's miseries, unfortunately, unless it's an adoption, and I've had the pleasure in the past year to help a family with an adoption, but most of the time, people are in court because of their problems. It may be a dispute with a landlord or a credit card company, a denial of workers' benefits, a foreclosure, or a divorce. Working families deserve a judge who has the years of experience in handling these problems in a courtroom, a judge that understands how her decisions are so important to that family, a judge who will impartially, carefully, and timely hear their cases so they won't have to wait months or even years to get the answers they need to move on. A judge whose only agenda is to consider the facts, the law, and the Constitution not a predetermined outcome based on who the parties are in the courtroom at the time. After spending 37 years in courtrooms, big and small, all over the state, as an attorney helping ordinary people with their extraordinary problems, as a bar association leader fighting for justice reform, and as a judge on the Court of Appeals, I've done this job for 6 years. I've earned the trust of the people that I served. I put the Constitution, the law, first, without consideration of politics or special interests. I've been endorsed by the Trumbull County Bar Association. I have a high rating, the highly recommended rating from both the Lake County and today the Portage County Bar Association. Those are court watchers. Those are the people that are in the court every day. I also have the endorsement of the Western Lake County Fraternal Order of Police, as well as the Plain Dealer. I respectfully ask for your vote in November to go back to the job that I really loved. Thank you.
I was magistrate for the Chardon Municipal Court for a couple of years, and I practiced in front of the 11th District, and I believe I practiced in every court throughout the 11th District. As far as being on the bench, the magistrate was my only experience there. But I don't believe that you have to actually be on the bench in order to have the experience. Again, if you're in the courtroom every day applying the rules of procedure, applying what we call stare decisis, how other cases affect the facts in front of you, you're well versed in what it takes to render a decision.
I served for 6 years on the 11th District Court of Appeals from 2007 to 2013. During that period of time, I was asked by Chief Justice at the time, Tom Moyer, to serve as a visiting judge on the Supreme Court of Ohio. I was also assigned by the Chief Justice to serve in other courts of appeals. Ohio, as a Court of Appeals judge, you are employed by the state of Ohio. So I was asked to go into Cuyahoga County, into Summit County, into Ottawa, Lucas County, to hear cases by assignment. I have written over 500 opinions, worked on thousands of cases, and unlike my opponent, who has served for 3 days as a magistrate in the Chardon Municipal Court, I have 6 years of experience. When I came off the bench, I was hired by different individuals to do private arbitrations. No, I am not. Right.
Not sure where this question's coming from. Should all elected officials pay their share of taxes? Do you or any of your businesses, ventures owe past due taxes? Mary Jane Trapp.
No, my taxes are current and filed. I've never had tax liens or had any issue with that.
Mr. O'Brien.
Everyone should pay their taxes. As far as I understand, I believe there's one business entity that's behind in taxes that I'm a minority owner in, and working towards that. Otherwise, I believe I'm up to date on all the taxes.
Okay. I have no more questions. This is just a general question that I'm going to throw out. With all the monies that are spent on campaigns, especially with judges, what are your thoughts on that, Mr. O'Brien?
Say the question again, I'm sorry.
The money, the campaign costs that are put into judicial candidates.
You mean outside cost or by the candidates themselves?
The candidates themselves.
Okay, so I think, the issue is, I think the geographic parameters of this district, it's a 5-county district, so in order to get the word out, you certainly have to be able to spread the message, and you do that through media or whatever it takes. It's not cheap to do such a venture, so you go ahead and put the amount of money out there that you can to push your message. As far as outside interest, if it's speaking to a bigger issue such as the Supreme Court, recent rules have found that outside entities are allowed to advertise. Judicial branch is very important, and I think people find that they want to make sure their candidates are the ones sitting on that bench. So a lot of outside people are interested in these races.
Okay. Mrs. Trapp.
I'm very concerned about the amount of money that it takes and that comes into races for, it doesn't matter whether it's Common Pleas Court, the Intermediate Court, or the Supreme Court of Ohio. I served as president of the Ohio State Bar Association, and in that position, I worked very closely with the Ohio League of Women Voters and other good government groups to look into the issue of public financing of judicial races in order to take the money and the appearance, and this is very important, the appearance of impropriety of having so many people that appear in front of you donate to your campaign. We're still working on that issue. The problem is that we have United States Supreme Court precedent that works against us.
Thank you. What does an appeals court do? Ms. Trapp.
Yes. And the Ohio Court of Appeals, particularly the 11th District Court of Appeals, is usually the court of last resort. So if you have a case in county court here, or you have a case in Common Pleas Court, and you don't like the outcome, and 50% of the time, shocker, somebody doesn't like the outcome. So you have the right to appeal that to the 11th District Court of Appeals. That is generally where the case ends, because statistically the Supreme Court of Ohio accepts about 8% of the cases that are appealed to it. Now, if it's a death penalty case, that skips over the Intermediate Court, the 11th District, goes directly to the Ohio Supreme Court. There are some very special types of actions called writs. Habeas corpus, a lot of people have heard of that. That comes as an original action, meaning at the first instance to the Court of Appeals.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, you want to comment?
All of that's true. The Court of Appeals is usually a court of last resort for most people in the state of Ohio, because most cases don't get to the Supreme Court, which I think it's all the more important why decisions need to be rendered quickly and effectively with somebody who has the experience of applying the rules day to day throughout the courts of the district.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions we have for you.
Thank you.
Mary Jane Trapp and Casey O'Brien, 11th District Court of Appeals. Darya Klammer. Hi. Mr. Lynch is her opponent, but he was unable to attend. He already had a prior anniversary trip to Europe. You can give your 3-minute initial statement.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming out tonight. It's great to have so many people interested in elections. So for many, the Court of Appeals is the last stop to see that justice is served. So it's really important that you have a judge who will uphold the law and not legislate from the bench. And for this reason, you need a judge who has both experience and integrity. Now, I've been practicing law for more than 20 years, but 20 years is just a number. I'm talking about the kind of experience that comes from helping all sorts of people handle all sorts of problems inside and outside of the courtroom, and from serving the public as an assistant prosecuting attorney, prosecuting everything from juvenile delinquency cases to adult murder cases, and also from serving the community as a magistrate, hearing and deciding cases when people bring their problems in front of me. So it's more than just this great experience that makes a great judge, though. It's also about integrity, and that's the integrity that comes from a commitment to behaving in a manner to make the community proud. Now, I've demonstrated this in my personal life. My husband and I raise our children to do the right thing, and I've embraced this as a prosecuting attorney, knowing that it was more than just about getting convictions, but also ensuring that the system of justice was preserved, and also as a magistrate, ensuring that the people who bring their cases in front of me every week leave knowing that they've had their voices heard and that their cases were decided fairly. So I have the experience and the background to be a great judge. In my race, I have been highly recommended as of today by the Portage County Bar Association. I am the only candidate in my race to receive the highly recommended rating from the Lake County Bar Association and the preferred candidate rating from the Trumbull County Bar Association. I'm also the only candidate to have received the endorsement of the Western Lake County Fraternal Order of Police and from the Cleveland Plain Dealer. So I want to be your next 11th District Court of Appeals for the other seat. And I'm asking that you choose experience and integrity and you vote for Darya Klammer in November.
Thank you. I still have just these general questions, and they pretty much have been answered. You've kind of spoken to what judicial experience you have. Do you want to elaborate on that?
So for more than 10 years, I've been serving as a magistrate in the Mentor Municipal Court. I do that, I hear and decide cases. I determine discovery disputes. I make decisions on motions. I decide what evidence gets admitted. I preside over all of the non-jury trials. And like I said, I've been doing that for more than a decade. I also served as an acting judge for that court previously. I did move outside of the jurisdiction, so I had to stop serving as an acting judge, but I did that for a decade as well.
Thank you. That's all we have for you, Darya. Darya Klammer.
Thank you.
Dave Joyce is here, so I think we're going to have him come up now. I didn't know he was attending, but we're very glad that he's here, so we're going to give him the opportunity to come forward. Hi. Thank you. I'm glad to see you. So you can have 3 minutes to say whatever you'd like.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for not having things in there, but we were supposed to be in session this week and next, and we just found out at the end of last week, so I made a point because I promised Dr. Brockway I would be out here as often as I could to see his fine school. I thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and address all of you. Most of you, if you don't know me, I was the public defender for 6 years. I was a prosecutor in Geauga County for 25 years after that, and for the last 5.5 years I've had the honor of representing all of you in the 14th District of Ohio in the United States House. It's been an honor and a pleasure to do so. I told you when I was going to take this job, I'm going to tell you the truth, because we can all deal with the truth. And the truth is, I told you in the beginning that I was going to vote against the Affordable Care Act, and we're going to repeal and replace it. And when it came time for us to do that, I stood up and I told President Trump, Vice President Pence, and our leaders, Paul Ryan and the other members of our party, that we were not replacing it. We were going to change the way we pay. We did nothing to bring the cost of health care down. We did nothing to cover the pre-existing conditions with the plan that we were putting forth. All we were doing is changing the way we were going to pay our premiums. And so those of us who are 50 to 64 who may have a pre-existing condition would have the ability to pay 3 to 5 times what you're paying right now in your monthly premium, just so our children would pay less, incentivize them to buy their own insurance. That isn't a plan. We have some of the best healthcare providers in the world here in Northeastern Ohio. We never had a hearing. We never asked any of them for their input on doing that. It's wrong. It's 1/6 of our economy. We need to have an open debate, Democrats and Republicans, to come to a solution on what these problems are and continue to move forward so people can feel safe and secure in knowing that their health care is provided for them. I also have been fighting, because from my prosecutor background, on the opioid crisis. It's not just a crisis, it's an epidemic. And I worked, after President Trump declared it a national emergency, I worked with Tim Ryan and sent a letter to him asking him that we also put the funds to what we're talking about. Normally when you have a national emergency like a hurricane, we put funds behind it to fix it. Well, we want those funds because we know we're in ground zero here in Ohio, and we've lost more kids to the opioid epidemic than we have the Vietnam War. But lastly, what I'm most proud of is the Great Lakes. I'm affectionately known as the Great Lakes guy around the House. Democrats and Republicans come to me and ask for help. We passed the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative 408 to 17. And don't worry, I got all 17 names laminated. and to make sure that when we protect and preserve what I say, it's not a lake or a series of lakes, it's a national treasure, and it deserves to be protected as such for the generations to come. It's an economic engine for northeastern Ohio, and you here in Ashtabula have probably one of the most prettiest spots on the whole Great Lakes. I appreciate the support you've given me in the past. I ask for your vote again because it's an honor and privilege to serve you.
Thank you. You get 1 minute response time for questions, and they'll let you know.
Sure.
Okay, what is your stance on Ohio Issue 1?
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. I mean, here we are fighting the opioid epidemic, and we're going to make 17 grams of fentanyl a misdemeanor. To give you an idea, if you take a salt shaker, put out 3 kernels there, that'll kill somebody. This is enough to kill 10,000 people, and we're going to make it a misdemeanor? We're at war with this drug. And I don't know who thought this kooky idea up, but it's the craziest thing I've ever heard that we're going to do this. Because, fentanyl is coming in from China. And one of the things we did in our opioid reduction package was we got scanners at the U.S. Post Office so that they could scan the packages coming in from China to try to stop this fentanyl and carfentanil from coming into our country, because it's an absolute scourge on our young people. And as we've seen it here in Ashtabula, it's touched every part of our country. Kids are dying every single day, and we're losing 115 kids a day. We got to stop it.
What are you doing to enhance school safety in the districts?
Well, unfortunately, I'm the only guy in the House or Senate that's ever handled a school shooting. It's a terrible thing, and I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. But, it goes back to, we have a problem with mental illness. Some of you are here my age. There used to be mental hospitals in the state. They don't exist anymore. Unfortunately, it's become our U.S. prison system. And so we need to start taking care of the kids in the schools and starting to help our teachers determine whether or not people are having issues and how to deal with those issues to make sure they don't get exacerbated. I mean, the kid who in our case in Chardon, he stole a gun while he was at his grandparents' house from his uncle. The kid in New Haven, Connecticut, executed his own mother, who was a lawful gun owner, and stole her guns. You can't tell me that's not a mental health issue, and it needs to be addressed. And so I'm all for getting the safety that we need, and we've put funds to that to allow schools to integrate safety with school resource officers and other things in each school district as they deem necessary.
Thank you. Any ideas for moving toward bipartisanship?
Yeah. I said when I got there that, it's one thing for election. When I was a prosecutor, the first thing I would tell the people who got elected the next day was, yesterday you were a Democrat or Republican, and today you're an office holder. And it's time to take off your red jersey or your blue jersey and put on your red, white, and blue jersey and do what's right for our country. And I have the same attitude now, and I'm honored to be considered one of the most bipartisan members of the House, because there's no such thing as a good Democratic idea or Republican idea. They're good ideas, and we need to sit down at the table, discuss them, and figure out those areas which we agree, and then it makes it a heck of a lot easier to work on those things on which we disagree, because it's not going, let's face it, if they handled the Constitution the same way we've handled some of these things in Washington, they'd still be fighting about the Constitution. Eventually there has to be compromise, and eventually on your behalf, we have to move forward with the best interests of our country.
Does single-payer health insurance have merit?
If we want to become a socialist country, yes, it does. The price tag on that is $32 trillion, and we just can't do it. Let's face it, 62% of the people in America get their health care insurance from their employer. We did nothing in the AHCA to help those employers get their health care. And I can tell you, when I go around the district, you had people who were employees who were worried about whether their health care was still going to be there for them, and you had employers who were honored to be able to represent this as part of the package that they gave to their employees, who were afraid they couldn't be able to afford it either. And so the system and the Affordable Care Act was set up for failure. It was set up to become a single-payer system. Let's face it, President Obama told you that he lied to you when he told you, if you like your doctor, you could keep your doctor. That wasn't going to happen afterwards, but after they already sold the program to Americans. It's time we have this intelligent discussion on how we're going to take care of those who are truly needy, and how to let employers have the benefits and the things that are necessary to continue to provide that benefit to their workers.
Thank you. Do you think it is important to have public town halls with your constituents?
I've had 36, they're not necessarily called town halls, we call them Coffee with Dave's, but it's the same thing. I mean, it's coming into a room like this, and some people walk in and they have issues regarding their Social Security or their veterans benefits. They don't want to have that discussion in public. So we set up meetings where people come in, they have coffee and donuts in a setting like this. If you have something private, you come meet with me. And if you have a group has an issue, then we'll group them together and they can come in and we'll have the conversation. And I have people come in, well, have a town hall. I said, you're sitting right across from me. Ask me any question you want to ask me. I'm here every weekend. My lovely wife, you know, if you're serving coffee and cookies tonight, this would be a date. We don't get together too often. But she's a nurse at UH, and believe me, she says the same thing. You know, I've been there. I've seen how you treat folks. It's necessary that we continue to have this conversation with the American people. I have 2 offices in the district. I'm here every weekend. I have these town halls or coffees with Dave, and feel free if you ever hear about them, because the coffee's on me. And
Thank
good
you.
donuts.
One more question, because we need to get back on agenda, because the 99th guys have to get to another event.
Me too. I'm trying to go to, my wife and I graduated from West G, so I appreciate the ability to move me up so I could get back to our alma mater.
Do you believe pre-existing conditions should continue to be covered by health care insurance?
Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, none of us really asked for pre-existing conditions. My mother had an open heart surgery at 60, or both of her brothers died in their late 40s. Thanks to my wife being the nurse, I have a stent because she was the one who forced me to go see the doctor. I've also had melanoma. My father's died from melanoma. You know, where would we get insurance right now? Under the AHCA, Kelly and I we're on the Affordable Care Exchange in Washington, D.C. I pay $1,400 a month for insurance for the 2 of us and $6,000. So we pay $20,000 before we even get to our insurance. Now, under the AHCA program, we would have been paying 3 to 5 times that amount. So anywhere between $4,200 to $6,000 a month in premiums. Really, ladies and gentlemen, who could afford that? All you're going to be buying is catastrophic health insurance at that point. So the idea that we have to cover pre-existing conditions by making pools available to folks who have these issues, and making pools available to people who have mental health issues, so we can continue to address those, because we have to make it available to allow groups to pool together and share that risk among each other. I see my stop sign. Again, thank you all very much for the opportunity to be here. God bless you all. May God continue to bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. Joyce. Candidates for the 99th District, John Patterson and Michael Percio. And we'll begin with Mr. Patterson.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Thank you. It's good to see you all. Good to be in Jefferson. And most of you know who I am, and so I won't go into those details, but I'd rather give you a glimpse as to how I have worked for you the last 6 years in Columbus in a bipartisan fashion. I'm going to just mention a few of the bills that have been passed that affect each and every one of you. For one thing, the CAUV reforms that we worked through with the help of our auditor, Roger Corlett, that would address some of the issues that our farm folks had in terms of taxes. That was passed in a bipartisan fashion. We worked diligently on that. Secondly, the sales tax holiday. I carried the House version of the bill. Ultimately, they took the Senate version, but especially for us who live in a border county, and we all know where people would go to buy their school clothes in Pennsylvania. That sales tax holiday benefits you, benefits our working families, and it also benefits our businesses here in Northeast Ohio. Thirdly, very important, school safety. With the help of Representative LaTourette, we passed the school resource officer bill that you're familiar with, and I can tell you as of last Friday, $12 million was appropriated throughout the state. Each and every school in this 99th district is getting some money. It's over about $112,000 for school resource officer training and for mental health awareness within the staff. Critically important, something I care deeply about. Fourthly, Lake Erie. We have passed House and Senate the Lake Erie 2020 bill, working in a bipartisan fashion because the lake impacts every single one of us. Critically important to understand that and to push forward, knowing that there's a balance between agriculture and feeding the world and doing what's right with respect to our environment. And finally, capital improvements, critically important here. Just to give you a short list, $2.5 million just in this budget we were able to bring home for Indian Mounds, for Platt R. Spencer Museum, for the Jefferson Historical Village, for Mel Harder Park in Chardon, for the Nature Conservancy in Rock Creek, for the Ashtabula Lighthouse, for the Ashtabula County Fairgrounds, for the Juvenile Court upgrades. Covered Bridge Pavilion, we're going to be breaking ground on that a week from Friday. That was a capital project in the last budget, and also the Ashtabula Maritime Museum, making improvements there. And of course, Kent State Ashtabula, and I also represent part of what would be Kent State Geauga. I have some of my constituents go there. Again, I'm John Patterson. I will continue to work for all of you all the time across the aisle, representing you to the very best of my ability. I ask for your support this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Percio.
Hello, my name is Michael Percio, and I'm asking your vote for November. I'm an Air Force vet. I served for 6 years in the United States Air Force. During my time in service, I received the Combat Readiness Medal, which is only given to those that support or maintain combat operations for 2 years straight. I also got the Meritorious Service Medal, or Meritorious Unit Service Medal, excuse me, and that's only given to the best of the best units in the Air Force. Currently, I work as an internal auditor for a large bank. I've worked in the financial sector for 3 years. I make sure processes and procedures are efficient, and that's what I plan on doing in government, making government efficient, saving our tax dollars and lowering tax dollars. I know how to get things done. After 6 years in the military and after serving for 2 years straight doing combat operations, I know that it takes a toll. I know hard work takes a toll on you. And I know how to get things done and be okay with that. Excuse me. Finally, I took on ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban. I know how to handle the opioid epidemic. I know how to work with law enforcement to make sure it's taken care of. See, the problem isn't just the opioids. It's the mental health issue, but it's also the cartels. The cartels are in Ohio, and if we don't do anything about the law enforcement aspect of this, we are all in danger. I want to work on 4 things: infrastructure, mental health, jobs, and business. Infrastructure, I want to get the northern manufacturing plants open again. I want to make sure that the trains are working again. I want to get the harbors working, get people back to work up north. Down south, I want to get electricity. I want to get water down all the way to Orwell. I want to make sure that we get storm drainage systems. Mental health, I want to get outpatient clinics that are run at cost, that take all sorts of health insurance, and make sure that there's no cost provided to those children that need mental health. Suicide prevention, I want to provide suicide preventions in all the schools. Once a semester, make sure the peers know how to handle suicide. And I want to provide dry beds as well, because we don't have enough of those in Ashtabula. I think we can all agree on that. Jobs, I want to make sure there's apprenticeships in schools again. Working with private sectors, working with the unions, and working with sole proprietors to make sure that when you graduate high school, you have something that you can use and not just a piece of paper. So you don't have to be $40,000 in debt when you graduate. And business, I want to give tax abatements to businesses that want to expand, as long as they show wage growth or they show job growth. And they have to show that each year on the taxes in order to get those tax abatements. Finally, I have a wife of 5 years, a 3-year-old daughter, 2 rescue beagles, and I am asking for your vote in November because I can get things done. Thank you.
Thank you. First question. What is your opinion on State Issue 1 and why? Mr. Patterson.
Every one of us has had somebody impacted with the opioid epidemic. Students, neighbors, family members. It's critically important that we address this. However, by putting this into a constitutional amendment, it's a straitjacket upon the legislature, the governor, all of us, if there are changes needed to be made. And I think that that is not necessarily what we need in an era when flexibility is absolutely important. So issue 1, even though it is well intended, And even though we all care deeply about this crisis and wish to do something, I do not personally think that this is the vehicle that would best address the challenge that we face. I would rather bring us together as a community, as a statewide community, and figure out how best to do that and address the problem, knowing that we must work together to do so.
Mr. Percio.
I vehemently oppose issue 1. Issue 1 is horrible. And on top of this, a lot of people don't talk about this. 19 milligrams of fentanyl that you would be allowed to carry can kill 10,000 people. But it can also be used as a terrorist device to attack not only Ohio, but other surrounding states. We don't think about these other problems that could arise out of this. You know, it might be well-intentioned, maybe not. It's funded by some of the worst people out in California. It's not funded by Ohioans. It's not by Ohioans. So why should Ohioans vote for it? Thank you.
Mr. Percio, what is your opinion on the recent development of House Bill 292, the tax amendment? Would you support this amendment if you were a state representative?
I'm going to tell you right now, I don't BS people, so I'm not going to tell you that I know it. You know, I do my homework multiple times a week, and I haven't run across it yet. And whoever asked that question, if you want to talk to me later about it, I will be more than happy to get back to you. Thank you.
Mr. Patterson.
292, and the person who is asking that question is referencing the retroactive pilot program for the Spire facility in Geneva. And as a result, I pushed hard for that, knowing that we have a delicate balance between economic development and the fact that those of us who are here and know about Main Street realize that we have Carlisle's that has been creating headaches for us for a long time, and I did not want to see that happen again, especially on the gateway to a county. And so when you address some of these very challenging, complex problems, you have to look at all the options. Bottom line is this: in a bipartisan fashion, both the House, the Senate, and the governor agreed to this permissive bill that allows for a local agreement to be reached. And if that local agreement is not reached, and by the way, it must be on an Olympic facility, a qualifying Olympic facility, if that agreement isn't reached, there is no retroactive pilot program.
Thank you. What is your stance on Medicaid expansion? Mr. Patterson.
If you look at my voting record, I voted for it. And I think that speaks volumes about what I believe in, who I am, and how I care for my people.
Mr. Percio.
So the Democrats often say that this is for mental health and addiction purposes. I'm not for a full Medicaid expansion. I never was. What I do stand for, though, is a stripped-down version exclusively for mental health and addiction services. So if and this is to save money. So if someone goes into a mental health clinic, they will get it provided for them like they should. But it's not for a full expansion of dental, health, whatever else they need. And it's mainly to get you back to work. So if you can get those addiction services or you can get those mental health services, the idea would be that you can get back to work and be productive again and continue with therapy. Thank you.
I'm trying to generalize this. What are you going to do to solve the fertilizer runoff that's going into Lake Erie, Mr. Percio?
So here's the deal. I've spoken to multiple people with the watershed and conservation, and they're not completely sure that it's just the fertilizer that's causing these algal blooms. No one is out in Columbus. And they want to put this on the farmers because it's easiest target. You know, I think that we need to remove regulation from farmers, and we really need to get the communities together and fund research to make sure that it is the farmers first. They still don't know, and it's still growing even though they've done everything they can in Ashtabula County. So if it's still growing in Ashtabula County and they've done everything they can as far as restrictions and regulations, then I think we deregulate and let the farmers farm, and they can be responsible for their own businesses. Thank you.
Mr. Patterson.
Thank you. Keep in mind that we founded the Phosphorus Task Force here a few years ago with the help of David Marison, and it has been a pleasure to work with that group over the course of my time in the legislature. I'm also assigned to the task force on water quality, and I've been working with this for a number of years now. Research is unclear, and let me be absolutely adamant about this point. The real issue is legacy phosphorus. We have seen studies that go back as early as 1935 that indicate that we have been dumping copious amounts of fertilizer, but it's not just farming community, it's golf courses, it's our well-manicured lawns and such. It's a comprehensive issue. There was a study done in Denmark. It took 40 years to clean up legacy phosphorus in a lake after they eliminated all sources of fertilizer or nutrient enhancement. My point is, this is a multifaceted issue. It involves both rural and urban, and it's going to take all hands on deck to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. This is directed to you, Mr. Patterson. What was your involvement with the negotiations of Ronnie Lee piggyback tax amendment, the House Bill 292, between the Geneva School Board and Ron Clutter?
As one who works for everyone, I represent not only the Geneva School Board, I represent Ronnie Lee, I represent every one of you in here. And as such, it's important when you're having these difficult negotiations and difficult decisions that impact everyone, that we have a sane and decent and rational conversation. So at the very beginning, I helped to orchestrate, and they will tell you this, meetings, several of them, to get these issues out. Anyone who is married in this room knows about those awkward moments when things aren't going right at home in your marriage, right, gentlemen? My point is, this is one of those times when we had to confront issues, and it had to be done in a manner that was civil, that had an end goal in mind, and that was to work through this for the benefit of all. And I'm here to bring people together to make those difficult decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Percio, you want to comment?
Yes, I would. The state should never have gotten involved, period. This was between county affairs and local affairs. As a believer in limited government and small government, it should have stayed that way. There are multiple actions that the county could have taken. Mr. Patterson did not need to step in, neither did Mr. O'Brien. This costs the county a lot of money, and it costs the county a lot of heartache. And if it had been done on the county level, at the local level, then we wouldn't have seen that. Unfortunately, what we saw was a personal tax abatement given to someone for a business venture that, frankly, isn't going that well. And he continues to put his name on this bill and on this idea that this was the best thing for this county. But as we can see, was it? This wasn't the best idea. So getting the state involved in local issues is a bad idea, especially one so personal and small as this. Thank you.
Thank you. What have you done, or what do you propose to do to enhance school safety? Mr. Percio.
So there's plenty of things we can take, and from a military standpoint, what we used to do were risk assessments. And I think that we can fund risk assessments which are relatively cheap, and you can find multiple different avenues to go through this, risk assessments in every school. And that's the first step. So you have a plan for every single school on, okay, if something happens in the school, where do you go? What do you do? And this is a plan to set this up. Second of all, then you take the measures that you need to take per school, per crime rate, per whatever that we can see that would affect this school. And finally, we will help fund those, but also on a county level, maybe they need to, look towards the community and see what they want as well, because I believe in the smallest government, and I don't want the state getting involved where it doesn't need to be. But providing those plans to the local communities will allow the local communities to decide.
Mr. Patterson.
As I've already discussed, the school resource officer bill was passed, both houses, signed into law by the governor, and it is now being funded. Why is this important? Because it's the first step. When the Frank Hall Foundation approached me to put together a plan to fund a resource officer in every school, that term did not even exist in the Ohio Revised Code, and we cannot fund something that doesn't exist. So the first step was to define the responsibilities, define the training, and that's what we did in the bill, and the funding followed. This is a beginning. We know we need to do more, but keep in mind, even though we were able to put $12 million in this budget cycle, we were still within the confines of this biennium budget. Working across the aisle, we are looking at, as part of a base cost, school safety that would be a part of every state budget moving forward. Thank you.
Do you support school choice, including vouchers in charter schools? If not, do you have other suggestions for failing schools in Ohio? Mr. Percio.
Yeah, I do. I support school choice. I think tax dollars should not be used for private education. I think private education should stay private. However, I think it's up to the communities themselves to decide how they fix their schools. Because when you go and give vouchers out, that just gives people another avenue to go to a different school. It doesn't sit there and fix the schools that people are funding with their tax dollars. So as a taxpayer myself, I want to know that my school's doing well, that my tax dollars are going there. So my idea is this: I want to deregulate the schools and bring it down on the community level. And once you deregulate the schools, you get the more money back into the schools because they don't have to jump through the hoops the state puts on there. So when that happens, the community, the school is beholden to the community and the taxpayers and the school districts can work together instead of following what the state tells them to. Thank you.
Mr. Patterson.
If one reads the Ohio Constitution, it is incumbent upon the state to provide a thorough and efficient education for each and every student. What does that mean? Well, like many other things, it can be viewed in the eye of the beholder. It's a partnership. It can't fall totally on the state, and it can't fall totally on local governments. And because of the tax shift, this current administration has cut funding to schools, putting more pressure on local property taxes, and that is where the tension has come in. My point to you is this: I've been working across the aisle with Bob Cupp, and some of you in education know who Bob Cupp is, on the school funding work group to find a way to fund schools that meets the muster of the DeRolf decision. It's incumbent upon us to do so. It's about our present, it's about our future, and finding that balance between state and local in terms of a partnership.
Thank you. Gentleman for 99th District, John Patterson and Michael Percio. Thank you.
Ready to head out? You got it.
Candidates for County Commissioner, Mike Hamper and Casey Kozlowski.
Thank you.
And we'll begin with Mr. Hamper, your 3-minute initial statement.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike. I'm Mike Hamper III. My dad and my grandfather are junior and senior, respectively. I was born here in Ashtabula County, raised in Ashtabula County here in Lenox Township, and I went off to Ohio Northern University for undergraduate and law school, and came back to practice law. I met my wife when I was in law school. She's also an attorney. And in the first conversation with her before we were even dating, we were talking about the reasons why we were in law school. And the very first thing I told her was that I wanted to return back to Ashtabula County. I want to practice law. I want to help people in Ashtabula County, my friends, my family, achieve their dreams. And that's why I'm here. I've practiced law now for about 4 years, and I've enjoyed every minute of it for the most part. But I believe it is time that I take a step out and I help Ashtabula County become what I know it can become. We deserve a future that's better than our past. We have the ability, the potential in Ashtabula County to be more than we've ever dreamed of. We need leadership that's going to harness that and bring us forward. There are 3 things that I think we can do in Ashtabula County that are going to do a whole lot to help us. First thing, we need to bring together our county as a single community. One who recognizes that we are one county with one future. That when we work together, we can achieve more than all of us trying to do our own thing. The second thing we need to do is hope. We need hope to believe that things are possible, to believe that if we are not going to believe that we're going to make any difference, then we don't act. We need to believe and have hope that the future is going to be brighter. And that hope isn't just, I wish. It's rolling up the sleeves, it's getting the work done, and it's having a vision that we can articulate about what Ashtabula County can become. And the last thing is leadership. And leadership is about actually doing that work. And it's about bringing people together and stepping back and not caring when you take credit. These are the things that I believe Ashtabula County deserves in its commissioner. It's things that I believe that we as a people deserve in all of our elected officials. And it's one of the reasons why I'm running for commissioner. As far as the things that I actually want to do for Ashtabula County, I have a website, electhamper.com. It has my issues, my vision for Ashtabula County on the webpage. It's been there since May. It tells you all the different things that I think we can do in Ashtabula County. It tells you all the things that I believe, and it tells you why I want to do those things. And I didn't come with that out of my own head. I worked with people in the know, in Ashtabula County, who know what they're doing to develop that. And I worked with people from around the country and regionally to develop how that can work in Ashtabula County. So I respectfully ask for your vote this November. I would love to serve you for the next 4 years as your county commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kozlowski.
Good evening. Again, my name is Casey Kozlowski, and I have the privilege of serving as one of your Ashtabula County Commissioners. I'm actually in my fourth year as Commissioner, and it certainly has been an honor and a privilege to serve all of you during my first term. Just to tell you a little bit about myself and my background, I'm a lifetime resident of Ashtabula County, born and raised in the Pirico area, currently reside in Williamsfield. Was a business manager for a local business here in Ashtabula County for several years. Was elected to serve as a member of the Pymatuning Valley Board of Education. Was elected twice to that position. Also served as a state legislator representing the 99th House District, which at that time included Ashtabula and Northern Trumbull County. And of course now I serve as your commissioner. I hold a bachelor's degree in applied business management from Ohio University. I also have been taught as I grew up that it's important for one to be a hard worker, have integrity, and treat others how you'd want to be treated. I think it's also very important that in a commissioner that you have someone that not only speaks and talks about what they hope to do, but actually implements things and gets things done for the people of Ashtabula County. And I'm very proud of my record as a commissioner over the last 3.5 years. During my tenure, I've had the opportunity to serve as chairman of the Eastgate Regional Council of Governments. I currently chair the Workforce Development Board for Ashtabula, Portage, and Geauga counties. And I also was elected to the County Commissioners Association Board of Directors by my fellow commissioners throughout the state of Ohio. And I feel that's been very advantageous as I have worked to advocate for issues that are important to Ashtabula County. I feel that over the last several years, unfortunately, Ashtabula County has not received its fair shake. We all recognize the gem that Ashtabula County is. We have everything to offer here in our community, but we truly have not been able to fully capitalize all that we have here with our relationship with Columbus. So I've worked to bridge that gap. As commissioner, I've worked to implement several ideas here at the county level that includes incorporating transparency into county government. We actually hold evening commissioner meetings throughout the county, the goal to visit every community in the county. Also introduced the county newsletter and advocated to put the county's checkbook online. In addition, the county actually implemented the countywide recycling program. We've talked about bringing that program back for several years. Well, we got it done. The county also has talked about for years developing the concept of a 911 dispatch center. We got it done. And it's now a state-of-the-art facility that's helping meet needs here for the people of Ashtabula County. And finally, we've maintained a very fiscally conservative approach when dealing with the county's finances. One of the most important responsibilities as a commissioner is to ensure that we're doing all that we can to be fiscally responsible, and that led to an increase in the county's bond rating. I look forward to your questions here this evening.
Thank you. Since 2008, the elected officials have implemented a regional ideology into our county. This in turn will eventually evolve into a regional form of government. Example, joint economic development districts. Do you support this concept of private-public partnership? Mr. Hamper.
So the regionalization of government and of services is something that can provide some benefits to Ashtabula County because it can help share the burden and share the benefits of those ventures. Public-private partnerships are a little bit different in that it's a private entity and a public entity who come together to try to do something better for the community. I also support public-private partnerships. Where it makes sense, private industry can do a whole lot of good to help the public provide do its job of providing services to the people. So generally, this is a very broad-ended question, and every single situation that comes forth is going to have to be evaluated on its own merits. But generally, I believe working with people and not against them will increase Ashtabula County's standing in the region. Thank you.
Mr. Kozlowski.
I certainly see value in exploring public-private partnerships here in Ashtabula County. I think we have several great examples here in Ashtabula County where it's working. But I also think we need to ensure that we do all that we can to maintain the integrity of our local governments. I recognize that over the last several years, from both a federal and state perspective, that we sometimes see government overreach. And I think it's very important that we still maintain our stature as locally elected officials in our respective positions. And that could mean, as a township trustee, it could be a county commissioner, it could be, the dog catcher. It's very important that we maintain that balance, but no question that I believe that there are certainly benefits to a public-private partnership where it makes sense.
Thank you. Questions on the Spire? Mr. Clutter has not paid his taxes. What should the county do with Spire? Mr. Kozlowski.
Sir, well, certainly a very difficult issue here in Ashtabula County, and it was brought up in our, one of the other candidates spoke to it. This is an issue that really should have been dealt with in 2010, and unfortunately, we're dealing with the ramifications of this issue in 2018. So, over the last several months, another commissioner, I have not served as the representative to a lot of the discussions, but Commissioner Ducro has, and that really the goal has been to try to find a solution that works for all parties. The MOU that was entered into by the school board, I think was an opportunity for us to meet the needs of the largest taxing entity that was a stakeholder in this conversation, I think it was a solution that perhaps would have helped address this issue and allowed us to move forward to not only meet the needs of the school district, but also ensure that this facility remains viable here in Ashtabula County.
Mr. Hamper.
Thank you. The largest taxing district that was impacted by this was the county. Ashtabula County taxpayers are the taxpayers who would be part of this arrangement. The Ashtabula County commissioners should have been leading the charge in this conversation and not kicking it to the school board. This is an issue that requires input in public meetings, not just having backroom conversations. The Spire situation, while maybe began in 2010, has been an ongoing issue that the commissioners have failed to really take public stances on, other than saying we're trying to do something to work about it. The thrust of this question is, I have to pay my taxes, why doesn't he have to pay his? That's really the core of this question. And it's a question about fairness. And I get that. My dad's been delinquent on his taxes. He's had the foreclosure notices. He's had to enter into agreements to pay him back. Otherwise, the county is going to come take his house. I represent clients who are in the same situation as my dad. So I understand the thrust of that question is about fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. How much is the new jail going to cost, and how do we pay for it? Mr. Hamper.
There was a study that was done as a preliminary study that estimates the cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $35 million, with an additional $5 million add-on that would have renovated the current existing jail into a better purpose. There are 4 different proposals in that comprehensive plan. The first is to build, the first 3 are to build a new jail facility right in basically the parking lot area of the current existing courthouse. The other is a campus style where you're going to put it somewhere else, where I think there's a 20 acres needed. So there's an idea of moving basically the entire courthouse complex. Paying for it is going to be the recommendation is to have a 0.5% increase in sales tax. That's what the folks at the consultants that the commissioners hired to study this said. I don't know if that's really feasible. I don't think it's going to put us higher than our sales tax in our neighboring communities. So and that sales tax was in order to be able to put additional bond money out. So short answer is we would have to study it and make sure that we would know exactly the impact. But that's my understanding of the situation. Thank you.
Mr. Kozlowski.
I'm the commissioner that serves on the Community Corrections Planning Board, and the Community Corrections Planning Board has been very active in this discussion over the last several years. I actually authored a grant, the Local Government Innovation Fund grant, to be able to fund the study that has been conducted of the criminal justice system here in Ashtabula County. And that meant going out and talking to mental health service providers, members of our police force, prosecutor's office, our judges, all those that could certainly most be impacted by this drug and crime epidemic that certainly plagues many parts of our county. And this assessment was recently completed. We have a draft report. It is not a final report, but that report tells us that we need to potentially look at a jail facility that would consist of 296 beds, roughly 56 beds of which would serve as specialized beds, those that would help meet needs as it relates to drug treatment or mental health treatment services. How we're going to pay for it, that remains a conversation that will occur over the next several months, and
Thank
I know
you.
I'm out of time.
Okay, what would the commissioners do to improve the agricultural economy in the county? Mr. Kozlowski.
Sure. Well, the ag community is one of the biggest industries here in Ashtabula County, and I recognize the very important role that our farmers and local food growers play and contribute to our county's economy. So I certainly think that from a commissioner's perspective, some of the things that we need to do to ensure that we're meeting the needs of these small businesses throughout our county, and that's what they are, they're small businesses. We need to ensure that we're installing the adequate infrastructure, and that could mean water and sewer infrastructure, high-speed internet access. We also need to be exploring innovative and creative ideas to be able to help meet their needs. And that means, enhancing our food markets. That also includes, helping to make investments in those that are looking to start their own business. I think the NEO Fund and many other entities here in the county are doing a very good job of helping to foster growth with many of these entrepreneurs that are really looking to take their idea in the ag community to the next level, and I'm supportive of those concepts.
Mr. Hamper.
Thank you very much. Since May, when I published my vision plan, I've talked about the need of increasing the local food market, adding processing facilities for fish, poultry, and possibly even dairy, given the contracts that have been canceled recently, as means of trying to expand the ability of our current farmers to reach more and new customers. Regionally, we are sending peas to Pennsylvania to be processed into dog food. We are sending our fish and our poultry out of the county to be processed. These are additional improvements that we can make here in the county, investments that we can make that will only allow our farmers to make additional funds by having value-added products. You see the great success of Mayfield Creamery down on 322 as a value-added product, somebody who's making cheese right there on the farm. That's a kind of way that we can provide additional resources. And as commissioner, it's my job to advocate for those things and show people a way and create an ecosystem where they can thrive. Thank you.
What is your stance on issue 1, Mr. Hamper?
So I believe I'm the only candidate running in the entire Ashtabula County who has supported issue 1. And the reason I support issue 1 is because I think it's high time that we actually try to do something more than the way we've always done things. I understand issue 1's problems, and I'm not going to begrudge a single person in the entire world who opposes issue 1. There are plenty of things plenty of good reasons why you can oppose issue 1. Issue 1 is a constitutional amendment because if it was done as a statutory amendment, the legislature could immediately repeal it. We have seen the lack of leadership from the legislature and from the current not representative, John Patterson's been fine on this, but the current state officials, the governor, et cetera, the attorney general, and they have not done a good job of actually trying to provide a path forward. So that's the reason I support issue 1. It's time that we as the people try to do something to solve this crisis instead of trying to ask the things to be done the same way they always have. Thank you.
Mr. Kozlowski.
I am vehemently opposed to issue 1. And from a commissioner's perspective, I look at the fact that the county's roughly $23 million general fund is, about 70% of our general fund dollars are spent addressing this drug epidemic that is plaguing our community. When you look at children's services, when you look at our common police court, you look at juvenile probate court, you look at our public defender's office, you look at all these various prosecutor's office, you look at all of these offices that have been plagued by this drug crisis here in our community. If we move forward with issue 1, it will be devastating to our community. And to be clear, with issue 1, you'll be able to carry up to 20 grams of fentanyl, enough to kill 10,000 people, and it'll be treated as a misdemeanor. That means absolutely no jail time. The Commissioners Association of Ohio, the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, the FOP, the Ohio Chamber, the Ohio Prosecuting Attorneys Association, all oppose issue 1. Paul Pfeiffer, former Supreme Court Justice, issue 1, a horrible idea. This would be absolutely devastating to our community, and I encourage you to grab a pamphlet in the back and learn more about this issue and vote no.
Thank you. What initiatives would you implement to spur local entrepreneurship and develop an economy that's lagging behind the rest of the state? Mr. Kozlowski.
Sure. So economic development is very important to me, and it's something that I've really strived to work on during my tenure as commissioner. One of the first actions, once we had a change in leadership at the commissioner's level, is we rewrote our economic development policy. Before, the county really strapped its hands as it relates to being able to offer economic development incentives to move our county forward. We rewrote that policy, and now we have all available resources at the state and local level to be able to better compete for economic development here in Ashtabula County. I'm pleased to say, as part of our efforts, progress has moved forward with this gas pipeline project, which is which has been noted as one of the biggest economic development projects to move forward here in Ashtabula County, and the commissioners supported a tax incentive package to be able to make that possible. In addition, we are making additional, we're conducting additional work to extend this gas pipeline project that could mean large businesses located in Ashtabula County. So I'm really excited about our potential on the economic development front.
Mr. Hamper.
Thank you. So the question was about entrepreneurship, which is all about new businesses and starting businesses and owning businesses. And I am a strong advocate of people owning businesses. We as a county have to invest in our local people first. We have to show that it's viable to be in Ashtabula County and to have a business here in Ashtabula County. I am a business owner. I'm a partner of a law firm. My dad's a business owner. Everybody pretty much in my family, on my dad's side of the family, at least they or their spouse are business owners. And it's because we Hampers have an entrepreneurial spirit of doing what we think it can be done better. Entrepreneurs don't start businesses just because they think it's going to be a fun thing to do. Lots of entrepreneurs fail, but they do it because they think they have a better way of moving forward. So the things that you do is create an ecosystem map, is where basically you say, if you want to start a business, here are the people you talk to about having loans, here are the community banks that you have locally, here are the regulations in the area, here's growth partnerships map selector where you can find these different things, and you can, so ecosystem map would be the first thing I'd create. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kozlowski, Mr. Hamper.
Thank you.
Issue 3. Issue 3. John, there he is.
Good evening. My name is John Rubicic, and I'm the superintendent of the Ashtabula County Educational Service Center. It's really an honor for me to be here today representing all the school districts in Ashtabula County, asking for your support on Issue 3. Issue 3 is a 10-year, $1.5 million levy to support the education and related services for Happy Heart students. Issue 3 would cost the homeowner of a $100,000 home approximately $52 a year, which equates to about $1 per week. The question is, why is the money needed? In December, the Ashtabula County Board of Developmental Disabilities determined they could no longer serve the school-age DD population. The school-age DD population is from age 3 to 22. Countywide, today we have about 70 of our most vulnerable students in the program. The projected cost to educate and provide related services to the Happy Heart students is approximately $3.4 million a year, and that includes transportation. And when I talk about related services, what that means is nursing services, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech services, as well as school psych services. The problem or the issue at hand is that all of our school districts in Ashtabula County, with the exception of Grand Valley, are on what's called the state guarantee. So what happens if those students were to go back to their home school districts and the student population would increase, there would be no additional funding for these students when you're on the state guarantee. What does that mean? That means that our school districts would have to incur those costs, that $3.4 million across the county, each individual school district, ranging from about $370,000 in districts like Grand Valley Local Schools, Pymatuning Valley Local Schools, to about $500,000 when you look at the Geneva Area City Schools. So, the Ashtabula County School Districts, through the Ashtabula County Educational Service Center, formed what is called, this gets a little confusing, the Ashtabula County School Financing District, which enables all of our districts to seek a countywide levy on November 6th. What's the purpose of the levy? By pulling the resources together under the Ashtabula County School Financing District, our schools are able to provide shared services. I got the stop sign and I still had more to go, so hopefully there's some questions so I can kind of fill in.
Yeah, we do have some for you, John. What levy funds are the Board of MRDD providing toward the school-age children's education?
Okay, the question was, what levy funds are provided by the Board of DD for the school-age students' education? We're not receiving any funds from the Ashtabula County Board of DD, levy monies.
You got a minute. You can.
Okay, what we are receiving is we have an agreement with the Ashtabula County Board of DD to make sure that the Ohio Department of Education funding continues to flow into this county. Had the superintendent of the Ashtabula County Board of DD notified the Ohio Department of Education that they were no longer going to serve the school-age students, $1.1 million would have stopped coming into this county, which is free set-aside money by the Ohio Department of Education. Fortunately, County Prosecutor Nick Irochi his office put together an agreement between the Ashtabula County Board of DD and the Ashtabula County Educational Service Center to make sure that funding continues to flow into the county.
Okay, I think that's part of this next question. Is there state funding coming to Ashtabula County for the school-age kids with developmental delays? If so, does the ESD receive this money or the Board of DD?
What happens, yes, there is money coming from the Ohio Department of Education to offset the cost of educating students from Happy Hearts. And what happens, that money flows directly to the Ashtabula County Board of DD. And the way it works is our treasurer can actually see online how much money is deposited from the Ohio Department of Education into the Ashtabula County Board of DD with the treasurer there. And so we know how much money is being deposited. We bill them on a monthly basis. And with that invoicing, they wind up sending the money over to the Ashtabula County Educational Service Center to help offset the costs of educating the students.
I have no more questions, but we'll give you a few more minutes to wrap, give what else you want to do.
Well, thank you.
Say.
You keep that sign down. What I'd like to say to you, we've had a month of school so far. So as I sit before you today, I can tell you that with the first month of school under our belts, the Happy Hearts program is working extremely well. I've received email from parents of Happy Hearts students stating that their children are excited about attending school every day. We're excited about the new curriculum that our teachers are working with this year. Next month, Happy Hearts students are going to be participating in a Learn to Swim program at the Ashtabula County YMCA. The YMCA was able to secure a grant for that program. Jody Fowler has done an excellent job in working with us and bringing these programs to our students. We're very proud of the educational program that we're offering the Happy Heart students, and I would extend an invitation to everybody here. We tell people in the county, come over to Thomas Jefferson, look at our programs. We're happy to share, happy to show them to you, because really, it's your program. You're actually providing that through your tax dollars. And it's really, as you visit Happy Heart School or even Building Bridges, it's really heartwarming to witness it firsthand, witness the excitement of the students. You know, we need your support. We're asking you to vote yes on issue 3. Help us help the Happy Heart students. Did you have another question?
I do. Is there any money generated by the students of Happy Hearts? I don't know what.
I think I need clarity on that. Okay, if I'm thinking about that, is there any money generated by the students of Happy Hearts? In other words, they are counted on the rolls for DD, but they're not counted on the rolls right now for the local school districts. And if they were counted on the rolls of local school districts, because the school districts are on the state guarantee, there would not be any additional money coming to that local school district.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eastern County Court candidates, please. And we'll begin with Mr. Hiener.
Hello, my name is Mike Hiener.
Sorry.
And I'm asking for your vote for the judgeship of the Eastern County Court. I'm a 1986 graduate of the Ohio State University College of Law. Been practicing for 31 years. I've been serving as acting judge in both the Eastern and Western County Courts for 18 years. Served about 5 weeks in 2017. I've covered about 4 weeks so far this year. Judged 3 times in the last 2 weeks, and I got a couple more days scheduled the rest of the year. I grew up on a farm in Marietta, Ohio, and moved to Ashtabula County with my wife when we just celebrated our 29th anniversary. Dr. Diane Beal from the Country Doctor Vet Clinic. I am a Denmark Township trustee. I'm on the board of directors for the Ashtabula County Farm Bureau. And one of the things that I want to do for the court is I want to look at these opioid problems that we have. When people get to the felony level, when the drugs have their claws in them, the people are almost impossible to cure. But if we can catch them at the misdemeanor level, when they're first getting started, we may be able to solve the problem, at least give it a chance. About 20 years ago, my wife and I were victims of a drug person felony crime. So I've been there, I know what it's like, and I'd like to try to keep people from being victimized as we were. I also would like to increase the hours that the court is actually in session. The court is a part-time court and is not in session 5 days a week. The judge's salary is set by the state legislature. So it's the same whether the judge works 1 day or 5 days. The staff works 5 days a week, and my goal is to increase the hours that the judge is actually there. That will not increase any taxpayer money and will make the court flow more efficiently. My wife and I live on a 140-acre farm where it's a working farm. I don't golf. At the end of the day, I go drive a tractor instead of a golf cart. They say that a farmer has the best work ethic and the most efficient working, and I will bring a farmer's work ethic to the court. Thank you.
Mrs. Miller.
Thank you. My name is Virginia Miller, and I am also hardworking and diligent, but I am not a farmer. I have a successful private practice in Jefferson, very busy. I am also acting judge in Eastern and Western County courts. I've been doing this for 20 years, actually longer than Mr. Hiener, my opponent right here. I don't do it as often as he does. I'm not sure how he has that time in his schedule to do it as often as he does, but I do my fair share of acting judging. I've made so many decisions in that court. One has been actually two were taken up to the Court of Appeals, and one even went from the Court of Appeals to the Ohio Supreme Court. You heard the Court of Appeals candidates talking about how rare it is for a case to go to the Ohio Supreme Court. That's very true, but it's even rarer for an acting judge to have a decision taken all the way up to the Ohio Supreme Court. And it was affirmed, just so you know. They didn't say I made a mistake, so that's always good when you're a judge. But you always have to be ready as a judge to be told you're doing something wrong. That's what the Court of Appeals is there for. And as the judge in that court, we're not there to be popular. We're not there to make popular decisions. We're there to follow the law. We're there to listen to cases impartially and make a decision that is constitutionally correct as well as in line with the legal guidelines of the case. And that's what I intend to do as judge of Eastern County Court. With respect to Mr. Hiener's idea of addressing drug issues, that's always important. But at this level of court, I consider this a helping court, a solutions-oriented court. This is a lower level court, and this is where you can hopefully make a lot of inroads in preventing people from going on to commit more higher level crimes, more violent offenses. And in order to do that, you do things like have your probation department, we have a very good probation department in both Eastern and Western County courts, help find them programs to go to, things to accomplish, and maybe even use more community service so they can see the effects of their crimes, more creative sentencing, so to speak. And in addition to that, it's important to note that if you look at the numbers for Eastern and Western County courts, drug offenses are not a big part of that. The driving under suspensions, the no operator's license. Sometimes when I go and I'm acting judge there, I wonder, does anybody that come through here have a valid driver's license anymore? Because it's really an issue. And I know the prosecutor's office does what they can to help, but maybe a formal program, Ashtabula Municipal Court has one, a TIPS program, to help guide people get their licenses back. And there's ways to do that. And a lot of people don't know that you can file bankruptcy on your reinstatement fees that are owed to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. And if you know anybody that has those, that's a big thing that they could do. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you run the court system with a by-the-book mentality or a more common-sense approach? Mr. Hiener.
Well, first of all, as judge, you have to apply the law as it's written and put it to the situation, but you have flexibility. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about, and Ms. Miller's addressed this a little bit. Somebody comes in with a driving under suspension. I do not accept a guilty plea from them. We send them to the probation department to be evaluated as exactly what has to be done for them to get their driver's license back. When they complete that, they're licensed and insured, then they get a decent plea bargain. They do get a punishment, but more importantly, we have licensed insured drivers on the road. So you have to make sure the law is enforced, but you also can do it in a way that benefits the defendant and benefits society.
Ms. Miller.
Could you repeat the question again, please?
Would you run the court system with a by-the-book mentality or a more common-sense approach?
I don't think those are mutually exclusive terms. I think it's entirely possible to do both at the same time. When I was prosecuting, I was a prosecutor, assistant prosecutor for 5.5 years. I worked both Eastern and Western County Court doing criminal prosecutions, and before I was doing criminal prosecutions, I did some civil prosecutions as well, handling the treasurer's office and the building department and the auditor's cases. I've been in that court for both types of cases, and as a defense attorney, I've done those cases as well, including eviction cases. What's important to note is that it is not necessarily mutually exclusive to follow the rule of law and to make common sense decisions. As a matter of fact, it's probably the best way to be a judge, in my opinion, and you can do that in Eastern County Court. That helps solve problems. Mr. Hiener did say something about he would not accept a plea from someone on a driving under suspension. I would question the logic of that, as well as the legality of that, because if someone wants to enter a guilty plea and they understand everything and it's voluntary and knowing, you have to accept that plea.
Thank you. In your own words, can you describe the meaning of the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and would you honor any legislation which you feel infringes on the rights protected under said? Ms. Miller.
Well, the right to bear arms is a constitutionally protected right. We already have plenty of legislation in place that is enforced, and there's laws that judges must uphold when people violate those laws. As far as the second part of that question had to do with supporting legislation that would infringe those rights? Well, being a judge, you don't have much to do with legislation or anything, and as a matter of fact, if a case is going to come before you, that type of case, you should not make comments on that according to the judicial canons.
Mr. Hiener.
Thank you. I am a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I've been a hunter since I was a kid. My undergraduate degree is in wildlife management. My wife and I have guns. I have more guns than she knows about, but don't tell her that. And so it's a very important constitutional right that's very important to protect. If legislation is enacted that somehow restricts that, then it has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis as to exactly what the legislation is, what it says, what it does, and is it going to be constitutional or not. I don't think this is probably an issue that would come up in the Eastern County Court, but like all issues that come up, question the constitutionality, you have to listen to the arguments, the case law, and then make a decision. But I'm definitely a Second Amendment guy.
Thank you. Do you feel that our drug court system and the tax dollars spent is making improvements? What would you do to help eliminate this cancer within our county? Mr. Hiener.
Well, like I said earlier, one of the things I'd like to do is whatever we can do on the lower level to catch the people when they're young and they're maybe messing with marijuana and not the heavier drugs, to keep them from moving on to that. And it can be an interdiction not only on the drug level but on a poverty level. Whatever we can do, as Ms. Miller said, we're a helping court. It's hard. I mean, I do a lot of work up in the juvenile court, and we had 17, I think, children taken out last week on emergency hearings. So in order to address that issue, I think it's got to be a multi-level counseling, treatment, judicial. It's going to really take a lot of different avenues, because it is a demon that has people in their claws.
Ms. Miller.
Could you repeat the question?
Do you feel that our drug court system and the tax dollars spent is making improvements? What would you do to help eliminate this cancer within our county?
Well, the drug courts don't cost money. They are totally funded by grants. There's no tax money that goes into those programs. But that being said, the treatment programs that we have are working. Some people just don't want treatment or won't accept the treatment, and those are the people that just have to be put in jail. As far as having a drug court actually in Eastern County Court, I'm not sure that would be very effective, because there aren't that many cases that come through that court that are really drug related. With respect to the actual drug issue itself, many of those drug addicts actually have mental health issues that should be addressed in conjunction with their drug issue. Their drugs are used to cover up their mental health issues or to knock down the symptoms, I suppose is another way to phrase it. So mental health funding would be more beneficial.
This is in reference to the statements earlier. Are the driver's licenses related to drugs or alcohol, or the lack of driver's license related to drugs or alcohol? Ms. Miller.
Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. About 4 or 5 years ago, our state legislature said they were simplifying our driver's license law by reducing the number of suspensions from like 118 to 69 or 7, something like that. Those numbers aren't correct, but that's about what it is. There's a lot of ways to lose your license in Ohio. You can get a traffic ticket, just get a speeding ticket and pay your fine, but you didn't show proof of insurance, so then the next thing that's going to happen, if you didn't show proof of insurance, even if you had insurance, you just didn't show it, you're going to get placed under a non-compliance suspension. If you get a DUI, OVI, you're going to get a license suspension. And if you don't pay your reinstatement fee, then you have something called, you have to owe your reinstatement fee, so you can't renew. And then if you don't pay a ticket that you get, you're called a forfeiture suspension because you didn't pay your ticket. And they can put a block on your registering your vehicle. There's all kinds of things that come out of these. There's so many ways that you can lose your license. Thank you.
Mr. Hiener.
The majority of the suspensions, I think, fall in two categories, OVI, mandatory suspension, and also poverty suspensions, what I call them. The people who get laid off and don't have the money to pay their auto insurance, but then they still have to take the kids to school. Or if they get back to work, they have to go to work. Not so much on the drugs because, but that is a possibility, but as Ms. Miller just laid out, there's a whole bunch of different suspensions, which is why we sit down with them in the probation department. We get cheat sheets from the Judicial College laying out what the different suspensions are, how long and what they are. If we have to have cheat sheets because we can't memorize all of it, the drivers aren't going to either. So that's when you sit down with them and say, this is what you got to do. We're going to give you a 30-day continuance. Go work on this and keep doing that. And say, fine, your license is insured. Now you get a sweetheart plea bargain. You pay a fine, you pay costs. But again, we have licensed insured drivers on the road.
Okay, thank you. Candidates for Eastern County Court, Michael Hiener and Virginia Miller. I'm going to jump, we're moving up, so. She said she wasn't. Okay. It's been brought to my attention that Betsy Rader is here too, the opponent for David Joyce, but we're going to put her toward the end because the contact I had was that her representative was just going to give her a 3-minute statement. So we're already bumped up 5 minutes here, so we're going to keep rolling along with the 64th representatives, Michael O'Brien and Martha Yoder. Are they here? Okay. Okay. And we'll begin with Michael O'Brien.
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased to be here amid the tornado warnings in Trumbull County. First of all, I'm Michael O'Brien. I've been in public official for 34 years. I was the mayor of Warren before I was state representative, mayor of Warren. I was a county commissioner, and I was a city councilman. My first occupation, I worked for the Warren Police Department for 3 years. I'm a graduate of Youngstown State University. I majored in criminal justice. And as I serve in the House floor, I'm ranking member of Energy and Natural Resources. I'm also a member of the State and Local Government Committee, the Agricultural and Rural Development Committee, and also serve on the Finance Committee. I may add that I was appointed to the Finance Committee as a freshman based on my experience as a mayor, county commissioner, and city councilman. Quite frankly, I enjoy serving the public. Some people pick occupations. They go to school to be lawyers, doctors, architects, engineers. I went to school to serve the public. I felt that I would be best serving the public as a police officer. And later on, I decided to change the course and have a more natural approach in serving the public as a public official. I enjoy what I'm doing, and I am as enthusiastic as my 34th year as I was in my first month. Thank you.
Mrs. Yoder.
Good evening. My name is Martha Yoder, and I'm running for state representative in the 64th District. The most important thing for you to know about me is that I am not a career politician. While I am not part of the political establishment, I'm not lacking in the experience or skills required to represent the 64th District in Columbus. Owning and running a business for more than 24 years has helped me develop the leadership skills and traits needed to serve the citizens of this district. Skills like communication and problem solving, and traits like a work ethic and perseverance. Several years ago, I began to get involved in community issues and even wrote a column about these issues as a columnist for the Warren Tribune Chronicle. I realized that if things were going to change, new people needed to run for office. I ran for and was elected trustee in Farmington Township in 2013. As trustee, I worked hard to make our board more organized and move our township forward. I served as chairman for 2 years of my term, and under my leadership, we created a comprehensive plan. The township now has a zoning resolution appropriate for a rural township based on that plan. My proudest achievement is the implementation of a fiscally responsible plan for 24/7 fire and EMS that I co-authored with the fire chief. I have taken every opportunity to increase my knowledge, graduating from the Ohio Township Leadership Academy and the Joanne Davidson Leadership Institute, attending the Fire Marshal's Program for public officials, and meeting with other officials at all levels of government. My priority issues have been influenced by my experiences as trustee, my community involvement, and my time as a columnist. One thing I learned as a trustee is that infrastructure work is underfunded. As a legislator, I would make infrastructure funding a priority. As a columnist, I wrote about issues in Trumbull County Children's Services. Foster parents reached out to me and helped educate me about the broken system statewide. I will work towards reforming this system. I would also like to focus on workforce development, connecting education with the jobs available. Skilled trades in particular need to be encouraged more than they are by our educational system. I have worn many hats in my life: business owner, wife, mom, volunteer, activist, and public official. This diversity in my background is my greatest strength. These roles in my life do all have one thing in common: service. I've spent my adult life serving others and truly understand what that means. I humbly ask for your vote on November 6th. Once again, my name is Martha Yoder. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Who within Ashtabula County can vote for the 64th Ohio District?
Well, we have 7 townships in southern Ashtabula County. And we have Orwell Township, Andover Township, Wayne Township. We're referred to as South County. So those are my constituents.
Do you want to respond to that, Mr. Hood?
I think there's actually 6 townships and 2 villages. It's the bottom row of townships plus Andover and Andover Village.
Okay. Hence that, I don't know if there's no one from that area here. We have no
not.
questions for you. But
Okay.
the one question that's been asked repeatedly is issue 1. Would you like to respond to that? Ms. Yoder.
I am against issue 1. I think a lot of people have pretty well articulated it. The biggest issue is that it is a constitutional amendment. This particular crisis that we're seeing is one that is ever changing. And so to have things that are written in stone about a crisis that's changing is not wise. Of course, there is also the concern that others voiced about the amount of fentanyl that someone can possess, and it's just a misdemeanor. I think it's just a disaster, to be honest with you. I'm planning on voting no, and I encourage everyone else to as well.
Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you. I'm opposed to issue 1, as Martha Yoder mentioned, as far as a constitutional amendment is a broad reach. Basically, it is about 48,451 prisoners in Ohio's 27 prisons. Overcrowding is an issue. Every year, 1,200 prisoners are released in those 27 prisons in Ohio. That's because every year, 1,200 prisoners are booked in the Ohio Department of Corrections. The state of Ohio, for the operation and maintenance of one prison and the construction of one prison, is going to be $1 billion. So quite frankly, the state of Ohio has no interest in building another prison. Prison overcrowding is the issue. Releasing 4th degree and 5th degree felonies, with the extensive interview process is on the issue 1. However, as many people have said before, the fentanyl issue on this, I'm stopped,
You can
but
finish your sentence.
the fentanyl issue on the issue 1, the fentanyl piece of issue 1 is disastrous, it's killing people, and that's why I'm opposed to it.
Okay, thank you. Candidates for the 64th District, southern part of Ashtabula County. Someone say something? Michael O'Brien and Martha Yoder.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Since we are moving along here, I'm going to give Betsy the time right now. Betsy, you want to come forward? So if you have questions for Ms. Rader, please start sending those up. We're going to give her till 9 o'clock.
Which is how
Yeah,
many
about
minutes?
15 minutes.
Oh, 15 minutes. Oh, gosh, I thought I had 3. That's great.
Well, you get a 3-minute initial statement, then hopefully
Oh.
we'll get some questions for
Oh,
you.
okay, great.
All right.
You're
Betsy
about to get
Rader,
15
candidate
minutes.
for U.S. Congress.
Thank you. So I have met many of you, but not all of you. I live in Geauga County, where I've lived for 24 years with my husband of 33 years and our 3 children who all attended the West Geauga schools. I've been very involved in the community there, everything from the board of the Geauga County United Way to the foundation, the Park Foundation Board, the Zoning Commission, Board of Deacons at my church. But I was born in Coshocton, Ohio. My dad was a game warden, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. They had 4 kids, and when I was 9, my parents divorced. And my mom was a single mother of 4 then, with no real job experience, and so she had to work as a single mom. She had to work minimum wage jobs, and we were plunged into poverty. So I grew up very poor, struggling to make ends meet, struggling to pay the rent, qualifying for free school lunches, and I really appreciated the help I got along the way. Public schools, teachers who reached out, federally subsidized student loans that allowed me to go to Ohio State, where I worked nights and weekends and graduated in 3 years, first in my class, and was able to get a full financial needs scholarship to Yale Law School. And I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to be able to advocate for people. I wanted to empower myself and my family, but I also wanted to empower other people. And throughout my life, I've really tried to walk that walk and not just talk the talk. So I've done things like served on the board of Cleveland Legal Aid, making sure that people with low incomes have access to justice, people like battered women who otherwise wouldn't have help when they're trying to protect themselves. I went on to run Geauga County's Child Advocacy Program for abused children and worked for the juvenile court in Chardon. I went on to work as senior counsel at the Cleveland Clinic, went back to graduate school in healthcare, and then worked at Medicare and Medicaid, working to make sure that people in this country have access to affordable, cost-effective, and high-quality health care. Now, I'm running for Congress because the time has come for this county to have a leader who will stand up for them, who will make sure, for instance, that you can afford your prescription drugs. Right now, there's a law that prohibits the government from negotiating the price of prescription drugs. The only reason for that is high-paid, special interest lobbyists paying off people in Congress, paying into their campaigns so that they won't pass laws to protect people and make health care affordable. I don't take corporate PAC money. I'm going to represent the people of this district and do what's best for them. And that's just one example of the many things you can see on my platform that's on my website. I've laid it out clearly, and I look forward to representing you.
Thank you. What would you do to improve the health care situation?
Well, I guess I didn't need to do that in my speech. First and foremost, I have been in living rooms around this district for a year and a half now, and I hear about prescription drugs constantly, people skipping their drugs because they can't afford them. So as I said, the government should negotiate prices. We should have a law that stops pay to delay, that stops generic drugs from coming onto the market that are more affordable. So those are 2 things right there that would really help. Another thing I think we ought to do is have a public option. A lot of people like their Medicare system. What we could do is let people buy into Medicare. That would make the costs come down everywhere, because then you'd have more competition. The government has a lot of market power. It can negotiate lower rates, and that way people would have more choices and they would be more cost effective.
Does the Farm Bill help farmers in Ashtabula County?
Not the way it should. You know, that's one problem, again, when you talk about big money in politics, is that time and again we have seen things like farm bills that are really impacting the big farmers, the big corporate farms, more than they're helping the small farmers. We need to start passing laws that really target those small farms. That's what this country was built on, was small entrepreneurs who are farmers.
How much PAC dollars have you taken, and do you know anything about your opponent's PAC donations?
I've taken no corporate PAC donations. I took a pledge to that early on, and I stuck it with it. I had to actually send back a check a couple weeks ago. My opponent gets a huge amount of his funding from corporate PACs. I think the number is about maybe 36% of his money. If you look at opensecrets.org, you can see these sorts of figures and see that the vast majority of my money comes from small dollar donations under 200, whereas my opponent, it's corporate PACs and it's large dollar donations.
Dave Joyce said you would be a communist if you suggested a single payer system. It would cost $32 trillion. Comment?
Dave Joyce has run a television ad that lies about my position. I have not come out for single payer. I have come, as I just said today, and as I put on my website, that I support a public option where people can stay on their employer plan if they wish to, but they would also have an additional option that they don't have now, which would be to buy into Medicare. You know, I could talk about single payer. Usually, throughout the world, there are various things called single payer. There's different versions of them in, you know, Canada and Great Britain. And single payer is often where you just have one insurance plan. But that's actually not what I've advocated for. I've advocated that people should have options.
Thank you. We'll ask you what you think of issue 1.
You know, issue 1's a state issue, not a federal issue, so I've been pretty busy running for Congress and haven't completely studied it. I'd say I do worry about making things constitutional amendments. I've seen that be a problem in Ohio and other areas of the law when we put things into the Constitution instead of having it be legislation that's more easily amended. I do think it has some laudable goals. I have volunteered for an organization, for instance, called Toward Employment, that deals with people who are trying to re-enter the workforce after they have a criminal conviction. And I really think we have to do more to help people to get back into the workforce so that we don't keep having people come in and out of prison. I'll also tell you that my youngest brother has already died after a lifetime in and out of treatment. And I do think that we need to do more to help rehabilitate people. Just putting them in jail doesn't cure the problem that landed them there.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you.
Issue 2? Andrew.
Good evening. Sorry for, I think I might have been a little late this evening. I apologize for that. I have a 10-day-old baby at home, so she was being a little fussy with me this afternoon. So I'd like to thank you guys for inviting me to be here this evening. Would just like to just give a brief statement just about Issue 2. Issue 2 is not a new tax for the taxpayers of Ashtabula County. This renewal levy, in essence, will be used to assist the board in its successful transition of Ashcraft and other programs that we are currently transitioning to get down to mandated services of the county. County boards of DD have looked very differently in the past 5 years. We've had some big changes come from the state, and really we're just going to be really focusing on our mandated services as they stand. Our direct care hasn't changed much. The DD levy failure last year was very unfortunate, and the closure of Happy Hearts was also very unfortunate. We are thankful for the ESC and Mr. Rubicic for taking that over and running that program. We hope for a smoother transition, but I have spoke with many families that have transitioned over from Happy Hearts that are now at the Happy Hearts program at the ESC, and they have nothing but positive things to say. So again, I thank Mr. Rubicic for that transition. Both issue 2 and 3 are really vital to our DD population, and I hope that both vote yes on both of those issues. So thank you.
We have some questions.
Sure.
Taxpayers currently provide levy funds to MRDD that were passed to support Happy Hearts. Why does MRDD feel they should keep these funds for other purposes?
Those funds that are still being collected on those funds are being used for our current program. So we do have current programs still. We still have Ashcraft. We still have many community programs. Our transportation program is one of the biggest ones in the state of Ohio. And our EI program is also very strong. So those funds that are still being collected are going to DD programs.
What are the mandated services?
We have our waiver match is the biggest mandated service. A very large chunk of our budget goes to those waiver services. The waivers are very complex. I can kind of give you a brief overview, and if you'd like to talk later, we could do that. But the waiver is any individual that needs a waiver in the community that is eligible for DD services can get that waiver, and that waiver carries with them for the rest of their lives. So no matter what the DD service is, no matter what the DD issue is with that individual, that carries with them forever. So it could be $5,000 a year worth of service, it could be $100,000 worth of service a year. Those waivers stay, like I said, stay with them forever, and that is a part of the tax that is being collected now.
If issue 2 passes, will the funds be used to privatize services to the developmentally?
They will help in that transition, yes.
Initially, the DD board was seeking a replacement levy. Now you are seeking a renewal. What changed that?
That's a good question. After sitting down with Roger again and looking at we had hoped to transition Ashcraft to privatization in June of next year, because the renewal was not. I'm sorry, because of the new tax wasn't allowed, and we're just doing a renewal. We've bumped that up to at least March 1st. We're hoping that and I'll tell you, if this levy fails, that it's going to be bumped up even further.
Did the board make any adjustments to the pay and benefits of the Happy Hearts superintendent after she closed the school?
They have not at this time.
And again, they're asking what will issue 2 funds be used for, and how does it differ from issue 3?
I'm sorry.
How will the issue 2 funds be used, and how does this differ from issue 3?
I think John touched on issue 3. Issue 3 is going to be for those school-aged kids. I can't remember the school age, so you're talking 5 to 18. Our individuals are going to be from 0 to 3. We have that population, and we also have the 22 until expiration population. So those individuals in our EI program, the Ashcraft program, all of the community services programs that they go to, the transportation, and the the greenhouse and all of the other programs that we have there.
That is all we have for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, the two county auditor candidates. And we'll begin with Roger Corlett.
Thank you. It's good to be here again. Another time. Most of you know I am Roger Corlett, your current county auditor. I am a dedicated and committed public servant. I love what I am doing, and I would love to do it another 4 years. So I'm promising you that if I'm reelected, I will not leave before the end of my 4-year term. I know what commitment is. I committed to serving 4 years in the Air Force during the Vietnam War. I have been married to a wonderful woman for 50 years. She's sitting right there. I have dedicated my life to serving others by serving my church and many other nonprofit organizations, either as treasurer or a board member. The county auditor is the chief financial officer, chief property assessor, and the chief paymaster, amongst many other duties. The position should have an experienced financial person with management skills. I have demonstrated that I have knowledge. I have experience, professionalism, and leadership skills to lead this very important office and significant office to the county. I am a CPA with 32 years of accounting and auditing experience in the private sector, and another 12 years as county auditor. I promised in my first campaign I would bring professionalism, open door policy, and business experience to the job when I came in. And I would save money on the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and I have done those things. I saved $500,000 over the last 12 years to prepare the CAFR. In addition, I worked with the commissioner to save $3 million in future interest costs by refinancing the bond debt. There are many false and misleading statements being made about my staff, my office policies, my accessibility, and my openness. This happens every election. I ask you to search for the truth. Please vote for experience. Vote Corlett in November. Thank you.
Thank you. David Thomas.
Thank you. You guys are troopers. It's after 9 o'clock, so thank you so much for staying here and listening to us. This is really important. Thank you to A-Tech for hosting us, and Scott Wadega and his students for having this online right now, actually live on YouTube. So my name is David Thomas. I'm currently the fiscal officer out in Austinburg Township. That means that I handle our budgeting, our payroll, some of our tax issues, and also our records as well. I'm also a proud graduate with a master's in business administration from Baldwin Wallace University. And what that means is that I have the educational background to think outside the box, to apply different thought processes and techniques for leadership in organizations, and also bringing some of that business ideas into the public sector. I'm running for county auditor for a couple of different reasons. One, I think after 12 years, it's healthy to have a change. It's good to get change throughout the county. And two, the auditor's office, if you approach it with a different perspective, really has the most impact, the most direct workings with our taxpayers and our residents here in the county. And so as we talk about making ourselves more competitive, making ourselves more attractive for people to come in, businesses, families, and more importantly, for folks to stay, our farmers, our young kids, and our businesses, the auditor's office, I believe, has a large role to play in that. And I'm excited to be able to do that hopefully in the future soon. I think that the role of government, the role of the auditor, the role of the county, is to provide certainty for our taxpayers. That's the best thing that you can do to help folks with their budget. How do you provide certainty? First, you have accessible leadership. This means being out in the community, being visible. When folks have questions, the auditor's office largely deals, when you interact with taxpayers, with property values and property taxes. So when people have questions, they want to be comfortable with who they're talking with. They want to know who they can go to ask those questions. And as I believe, to challenge their government. It's healthy to do that. I also think that you need transparency when you have certainty in government. Now, how many folks in our county do you think know about the valuation process? How their property taxes are assessed? Where those taxes are allotted out? I would guess very few. To have certainty, you need to have information shared. They have to know about the process, and they have to feel comfortable with it. A role of the auditor should be, and I believe can be, as an educational arm, to spread that information. Having evening classes, sessions, having opportunities with our seniors, our farmers, our homeowners, to interact, to teach them. Here's what you can do. That, to me, provides certainty. And the final thing is customer service. And we'll talk about that later.
Thank you. Do you feel the tax delinquency procedures endured by Mr. Clutter or DBA Ronnie Lee LLC were handled in a fashion that benefited all Ashtabula County taxpayers?
Are you asking me?
Yes, you start, Roger.
Okay. Unfortunately, the job of the auditor is, we have a board of revision case, so therefore I could not, and I do not, present an opinion regarding the fairness of that deal that has been worked on by the school board and the commissioners and other entities. I have but one thing to do, and that's to set a fair value with the board of revision case. I, like everybody else, would love to see Spire exist and not go away. Unfortunately, every appraisal that we've gotten at the Board of Revision is showing it's unfeasible, and we're going to have to come to a conclusion as to the value, and that's all I can deal with. I can't, and my only role with the school board was to, right there. Ask me later.
Mr. Thomas.
I don't know how you can say this whole process has been fair when you don't even know a value on the property, when the school board doesn't know what's coming in, when that taxing district doesn't know what the levels are. Setting a fair value, Mr. Corlett's absolutely correct, is the role of the auditor's office. It's been 8 years, and it's still ongoing. We could have settled this, I believe, in 2014 and in 2016. You select a value, what the county believes is most fair, and then you go through the Board of Revisions process, through the appeal process, should either of the parties decide that that's not correct. That's how you settle it. I think this uncertainty that's continued, and it seems like will be continuing, is not healthy for Spire, it's not healthy for the school board, and it's not healthy for our county.
Thank you. There has been a lot of conversation about the statewide CAUV program. How would you manage that program, Mr. Thomas?
So I talked about giving certainty, and in farming, certainty is the number one thing. You're talking about a very thin line for your budget, and you don't quite know what's happening next year. So the auditor's office, to me, can provide certainty to our farmers by letting them know what's happening with that CAUV program. I mean, all you have to do is look through the Star Beacon, and you can see some of the articles and some of the absolute misery that has happened here in our county. And it's absolutely not just our county. It was a statewide issue. The state messed up. But what we can do in our county, to me, is provide that information and that education. To my knowledge, there haven't been evening sessions, there haven't been classes to new farmers, for example, starting out, informing them of what they need to do to apply for CAUV, what may happen to have them kicked off the program, and what they can do to maintain a successful CAUV program. And that's, of course, working with Farm Bureau, but I think it's the Auditor's Office taking the lead on that and providing some of that certainty that can help some of our farmers here in the county.
Thank you. Mr. Corlett.
I initiated discussions on the need for CAUV reform back in 2009, and I have lobbied for years to get legislative changes. It took a long time to get other voices on board, such as the Farm Bureau, the Farmers Union, and finally Representative Patterson helped in regard to the legislation. I am extremely pleased to see that with the legislative help, we have convinced the tax commissioner in 2016 to make changes, and then the legislature in 2017. With the changes in 2017, we helped save the farmers in this county $2.3 million for this last tax year. But I know that's not the end, and I'm going to continue to advocate for the farmers just as I advocate for all the taxpayers. But I do not want to lose farmers.
Thank you. Directed to you, Mr. Corlett. As a member of the Budget Committee, why did you support a request by the MRDD for the renewal or additional tax even after they closed Happy Hearts?
Well, the Budget Commission is responsible for looking at the need. The budget they give us has to show a need. And we usually don't go to the extent we did with the Board of DD, but because of the situation, we had several meetings with DD in regard to their budget. And the final conclusion was they're running out of money, and if they didn't get rid of some programs, they're going to be in worse shape. So, I mean, the Budget Commission, all we do is put our stamp of approval, but it's up to the commissioners then to put it on the ballot.
Mr. Thomas, response?
Sure. So I can't speak specifically to that issue. I wasn't in those meetings, of course. I've been reading it in the papers as well. But I can speak to the broader issue of the Budget Commission. So the Budget Commission oversees all the budgets for the county, interacts with myself as a fiscal officer for a township, our schools, our libraries, for example, and some of the other governmental entities. I was fortunate as a fiscal officer to have an absolute rock star, Barb Schaub, as our former fiscal officer in Austinburg, who was able to train me, and I was prepared. Some of the folks in our county are not as prepared and ready. I think that the Budget Commission can do a much better job at educating those folks, working with them, sharing what needs to be done, and allowing them to have some of the information that they really should require.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas, Mr. Corlett ran his past campaign based on saving the county money utilizing in-house appraisals, but in the past he has consistently outsourced certain appraising costs, costing taxpayers money. Would you have the same mentality?
I think you have to look at based on the budget analysis. So what's the cost versus what's the benefit? I think it's healthy to have some of the outside appraisals come in and see what what the office has done, and just to clarify that. Now, I can tell you though, and this goes back to the Spire as an example, the county spent over $100,000 on that duplicate appraisal. $100,000. I'm sure we're spending that amount and other examples as well. I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think that's positive for the taxpayers that we have here, taxpayers that have to spend their own money on appraisers, spend their own money on folks coming into the Board of Revisions hearings.
Mr. Corlett.
Okay, I never ran on anything about inside appraising. So somewhere we've got a miscommunication. The county has always had to have an outside appraisal company, especially when it comes to the appraisal every 6 years, the mass appraisal. And I said from the very beginning, and I'm probably only one auditor in the whole state that will say it, we have an awful way of raising tax money, because we raise it on the basis of a fair market value, and I'm the one that has to try and figure that out. We spend $1 million just to do that in 1 year. And people think we raise it in 1 year, but it's really over a 6-year period that we're raising it or we're lowering it. It takes into account the whole history. But, you know, I don't think this is a reasonable way to raise taxes.
Mr. Corlett, in your time as county auditor, has there ever been a 75% decrease in property valuation, commercial or residential?
75% decrease. I can't say that I'm aware of a 75% decrease. I know we had a lot of decrease when I first came in. They were finishing. They had already engaged the outside appraisal firm, and that was finished for 2008. So I really had no control over that. 2008 value stayed pretty much the same, but when we got to 11, because of the recession, values definitely did go down. And I really can't speak to a 75% decrease unless it's related to Spire. And, you know, when we start with a construction, it's always at cost because you can't, there's no other way to value the property. You have to use cost. And going back to 2013 is when it first jumped up a lot, and then 14 was our reval year. So we had a large number, and that's what we've been fighting over.
Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, I think the question speaking to Spire in 2013 is valued at roughly $55 million. In 2014, the current Board of Revisions is looking at values anywhere between 7.8, I believe, and 11, roughly $1 million. So that's about a 75% decrease from 2013 to 2014, which I think really helps to display just how uncertain this whole situation is. There's no way, I think, that you can go from 1 year to the next and decrease your value, whether you're a homeowner, you're a businessman, you're a farmer, from 54 million, 55 million, down to 7. Now, I have seen those increase. There are folks along the lake who have seen their property values increase quite a bit, but I have not heard or anyone approach me as well, except for the Spire issue on 75% decrease.
Thank you. This person says, Mr. Thomas, I received a flyer from you promising me a tax break on my hard-earned dollars. Can you make such a promise? And can Mr. Corlett make me a similar promise?
I don't know what flyer that would be referring to. On my information, my postcard, essentially, I mentioned that you deserve more for your hard-earned dollars. And my information is, I think, very straightforward. If we give the taxpayers more information, if we educate on the process, on the Board of Revisions process, on challenging your values and knowing what goes into them, I have to believe that there are properties here in the county that are valued at more than what they're worth. And so by giving the taxpayers more of that information, that allows them to see, are they paying too much? And what is the fair price? So that might be what that's referring to. But no, the auditor's office does not arbitrarily decide values, nor can they give tax breaks. It's more about information.
Mr. Corlett.
There's certain tax breaks out there for homestead and CAUV and forestry and that sort of thing. And, you know, what we've tried to do since I've been in office is educate. You know, it's really difficult because some people don't read papers, some people don't listen to the radio. They're not even on Facebook or anything else. But we try to get the message out that, you know, there's a way to talk to the auditor's office and find out how your property is valued. I did a whole program that the state association came up with, is Your Home, Your Value. I spoke to a number of groups in regard to how this whole process works. And it really is up to you to learn how your property value is determined. And you need to tell us if you think there's something wrong with that value. That's part of the whole process.
Thank you. This ends our evening. Thank you, candidates for County Auditor Dave Thomas and Roger Corlett. Thank you for the audience for attending. Remember, October 9th is the last day to register to vote, and then all the absentee or in-person voting begins on the 10th. There's lots of information out there. The League of Women Voters has a 411 and you can get all kinds of information on candidates and voting information. Thank you.